All prices are fraudulent at this point in the game because they're not based on supply and demand. They're based on the ability to move prices in the direction you want it to move to hit targets that trigger other events. Boiler Room, The Wolf of Wall Street, Margin Call. These are all films that came out in the genre behind the scenes Wall Street. The Big Short, it's another dramatization. Those stories play out every single day. There's always a Big Short going on somewhere every day. That's why it's so confusing. That's why the economy is so messed up. That's why people are so at a loss to describe why things can be so messed up. It's because actually everything on any market anywhere is mispriced.
Today, Max Keiser weighed in on the recent crash in Bitcoin and crypto and shows that Donald Trump in fact wasn't the cause. Keiser says the price signals can be misleading and fully expects not only a pullback in the S&P 500, but that institutions are playing a huge factor in the volatility we're seeing. 10x research affirms this stance and shows that of the $38 billion that have moved into Bitcoin ETFs, only 44% are long-term investors, with the other 56% coming from short-term traders taking advantage of price differences. This means that some investors are not buying Bitcoin because they believe in it, but are using the ETFs to short BTC, betting that the price will go down. Keiser says the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF was a massive error on the part of the SEC. He says we're headed for an unprecedented event as the printing of fiat money continues to drive entire economies off the cliff. Keiser maintains a bullish prediction for Bitcoin, as the current price sits just over $83,400, down over $1,700 in the past week. Keiser discusses the collapse of the fiat money system around the world and points out the dollar is falling faster than we've ever seen. This is where he says Bitcoin will actually show itself to be a true form of money without influence from inflation or government's continuous printing. Let's get right into the latest interview with Max Keiser as he gives us his Bitcoin price prediction and why he believes a complete collapse is coming.
It's a global fiat money game, and you see different countries, their fiat money regimes are collapsing. Everybody knows it's a scam. Everybody knows it's a huge criminal enterprise. Everyone knows that they're part of a racketeering criminal enterprise. Jamie Dimon is not ignorant of the fact that he's part of a criminal enterprise. Every banker on Wall Street knows this. Every banker in the world knows this. Every broker knows this. And this is how they talk to each other when they're, behind the scenes. Nobody pretends that it isn't a criminal enterprise. So I think a lot, any professional trade group, when they get together, they talk shop. I'm sure lawyers are, when they get together, you would be surprised how they talk to each other about the law business, right? Or in the doctor business, the medical profession. I'm sure, you put a group of doctors together, you'd be surprised at what they say at the convention, right? It's same thing with bankers and brokers. I think I think people find that interesting because a lot of people, particularly with money and finance, they are very easily kind of distracted by the language that's being used in the financial press or on CNBC to hide the shell game that's going on. Then a lot of films came out that were in this genre. So like Boiler Room, The Wolf of Wall Street, Margin Call. These are all films that came out in the genre behind the scenes Wall Street. To blow the lid. I mean, and it shows people speaking as they do in the office, right? Margin Call is a great film, and everything, or The Big Short. It's another dramatization of what happens in brokerage and banking offices every single day around the world. Those stories play out every single day. There's always a Big Short going on somewhere every day, and these things are not. This is the grist of the business. It's the so-called efficient market theory doesn't exist. It's just a bunch of guys in a Bloomberg machines manipulating prices better than the other guy at their Bloomberg machine manipulating prices. That's the entire world of finance. There is no price discovery. All prices are fraudulent at this point in the game because they're not based on supply and demand. They're based on technologically the ability to move prices in the direction you want it to move to hit targets that trigger other events. That's what's being done. There's no supply and demand in any market at all, anywhere.
So
And that's why it's so confusing. That's why the economy is so messed up. That's why people are so at a loss to describe why things can be so messed up. It's because actually everything on any market anywhere is mispriced. If you look at the market, which is like 25,000 coins, it's actually a mirror of everything else. It's like the coin market is actually the market. That's the way everything is. It's completely mispriced nonsense. And the coiners didn't invent market manipulation. They're just mimicking what the system already was. And it's interesting for me, who's been in the business for over 40 years, to see how the regulators have responded to it.
Embracing an unyielding enthusiasm for the crypto realm, Keiser confidently predicts that the next collapse is looming on the horizon, as BlackRock and many other crypto giants are bracing for. Keiser reassures that a long-expected surge awaits, as Bitcoin's price will still rise exponentially in the second half of 2025.
And this growing awareness about what's really going on with these coins and how the banks are insolvent. They're held together with accounting chicanery. There's nothing there. The central banks are completely devoid of any assets whatsoever. They're leveraged worse than Enron. I think the Federal Reserve is leveraged 90-1 or something like that. The way that they constructed themselves was to purposefully avoid the regulatory scrutiny. I'm not going to name any of them because I don't want your timeline to be filled with a bunch of bots who work for these coiners, so I won't name any of them. But we know the most egregious of them, and they're designed to be regulatory obfuscating the playing field, and so to see the regulators, he's finally kind of wake up to what's going on, and why would I have anything to say positive about the regulators? This is a theme that you'll see. People say, why are you saying anything about the regulators in any positive way? And the fact is that markets without regulation don't function at all. There's no such thing as anarcho-capitalism. There is no such thing as markets are just self-regulating and take care of themselves, and everybody goes happily down to the invisible hand school of perfection, and that's false. Just like in any professional sports, you would need an umpire, you would need a referee, there's somebody on the field has to actually be there calling, making sure that the players are playing within the rules of the game, right? That's how, and the same thing with markets, there are rules and laws, and to make them competitive so that the outcome is mutually beneficial for all participants, you need regulation. Everything is regulated. Now, the thing about Bitcoin is that it is self-regulating, and it is perfectly regulated within itself. It's inert within itself. That's what gives it the aesthetic beauty. That's why it's artistic. And so with Bitcoin, all of that is self-contained. And so that's why regulators can't touch it and won't touch it, is because it already has achieved escape velocity, and it's already perfect and referentially to itself. And it's going to continue on its path, on its vector, with or without humans. We need Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't need us. And it's going to continue going. Even if humans became extinct, there would still be blocks would still be coming for
it'll be the
forever.
AI money.
You're right.
At that point.
I mean, it would just be. It's up to us whether we want to survive or not. I mean, this is a chance for humans to make it past what would appear to be a severe existential crisis in our species at the moment. But I'm not going to digress on that at the moment. So, nevertheless, with price discovery and markets, they're all busted, or that we learned anything from the 29 crash. The getting rid of the uptick rule for short sellers was a catastrophe. Should never have happened. And you just go down the list. Every couple of weeks, they get rid of another plank, another piece of the regulatory framework that holds markets together. And in its place come things like high frequency trading, which is outright fraud. So, okay, if you put a co-located server next to the New York Stock Exchange and just steal money, that's not making a market. You're just stealing money. The regulators have finally, after 15, 20 years now, stepped in and said, you know what, this is actually stealing. We think we're going to clamp down on this. So anyway, regulators are now in the so-called crypto space, and they're weighing in with their thoughts on Bitcoin, etc.
The Bank of Japan, historically central to global currency dynamics, is on the brink of default, which could precipitate a global economic downturn. Max foresees a looming economic catastrophe driven by collapsing fiat money systems, rampant inflation, and bank failures. He suggests that a transition to a Bitcoin standard might be on the horizon as the world grapples with the impending crisis. He asserts that the promises made by the Federal Reserve and central banks have been hollow, leading to excessive money printing and a proliferation of poor investments. And with the aftermath of the recent inflation surge, Keiser says this will not lead to a return to the status quo. He argues that the economy has spun out of control, with the US facing a mounting debt crisis. Keiser presents two bleak possibilities: hyperinflation or a deflationary depression. In either scenario, the overall quality of life deteriorates. He notes the absence of viable solutions, indicating an even greater severity of the crisis. Interestingly, he points out how political figures are discussing Bitcoin as part of a potential solution, marking a shift towards a Bitcoin-centric financial framework. What do you think about the latest interview with Max Keiser? And what are your thoughts on his prediction for Bitcoin? Drop your comments down below and subscribe if you enjoy the content we do here.